the Liberal Prime Minister is again spreading illusions. CBC ran a big headline that he's going to introduce a new law to get projects built. Where have we heard that before? 11 months ago, this House gave him unprecedented legal powers under Bill C-5 to approve projects quickly. He said these powers would allow him to build at unimaginable speeds. 11 months later, he has not used them once to approve a single solitary project. There are 500 of them waiting for his approval. There's only one thing in the way: him. We don't need an announcement, a symbolic signing ceremony, or any other illusions. We need him to get out of the way. Get out of the way, get rid of the industrial carbon tax. Get out of the way, approve the 500 projects waiting. Get out of the way, grant a permit for a pipeline to the Pacific. Get out of the way and legalize shipping oil off the West Coast. Let builders build, workers work, and investors invest. To do that, though, we also need to protect private property, which is the foundation of any economic civilization. Last August, the BC Supreme Court ruled in the Cowichan case that Aboriginal title had prior and senior status over private property rights, what is called fee simple. Fee simple is the legal term for the title you have to own your home. This is an unprecedented ruling, Mr. Speaker, and it changes everything. And now, we have to acknowledge how this ruling came to pass. It was the result of the Liberal government refusing to defend property rights in the court. See, the federal government is the defendant in this case. It is named, and it is frankly, the only defendant. The Liberal government passed litigation guideline 14, an instruction from the Liberal cabinet that federal lawyers were not to argue for the seniority of fee simple property rights. The judge noted in her 800-page ruling that this is one of the reasons she could not protect property rights in her decision. That guideline is still on the Liberal government's website, meaning the Prime Minister has kept it in place. 8 months went by after this ruling, which affects 800 acres and over $1 billion of private land, and the Prime Minister, who is the head of the government that is the defendant in the case, said absolutely nothing. He said nothing, he did nothing. Then the other day, he stood up and spread the illusion that he suddenly supports property rights, all while he is instructing his lawyers through an explicit guideline still on the government website not to defend those same property rights. Already there are reports of over $100 million of investment being canceled because land title cannot be secured, and as a result of the fact that there is not guaranteed collateral for the investors and the lenders. To make matters worse, the Prime Minister directed his Liberal government to sign the Musqueam Agreement, which began the process of granting title to the Musqueam over lands that include Metro Vancouver, Delta, and even the same Richmond lands that the Cowichan decision granted to the Cowichan people, causing an even greater mess. Now, the Liberals claim that their framework agreement with the Musqueam has no legal force and it doesn't matter, which raises the question of why they signed it at all. But what is clear, and what legal experts say, is that there is no protection for private property rights in that agreement either. All of this raises big concerns, not just for Richmond and the Lower Mainland, but right across British Columbia, because there are claims on almost the entire province. Because British Columbia is not a province where land cession has happened through the treaty process, there are going to be countless other claims that will come forward from other nations using the same precedent that came from the Cowichan agreement, for the Cowichan ruling, that could threaten literally millions of homeowners. In the meantime, investment is paralyzed and suspended. Liberals across the way are trying to downplay the concern, but let me quote Mayor Malcolm Brodie of the City of Richmond, quote, "Property owners in Richmond and throughout the province can no longer rely on their title confirming a fee simple interest as conclusive evidence of absolute ownership of their land. The court's untenable decision cannot remain unchallenged." Clearly the mayor of the city of Richmond would not be raising this prospect that his own residents do not have clear title over the homes that they bought if it was not truly a concern. And frankly, I don't know how the Liberals can deny the consequential impact of a court ruling that says that there is one form of title that takes precedence over home ownership, fee simple land title. Of course, that is a revolutionary change. It is an unprecedented change, and it threatens the very economic foundations of our entire land owning system. Mr. Speaker, without property rights, there are no economic rights. There is no country in the world where people are able to feed themselves, to house themselves, to prosper, to start businesses without having secure title. It is literally the single biggest determinant of economic prosperity. The great economist De Soto even pointed out that there are literally trillions of dollars of wealth that are deprived of people in third world countries simply because the people who live on the land do not have title of that land and therefore cannot build anything, including a home for themselves on that land. Therefore, to have a property-owning, free market democracy, you need to have secure land title. And that is why Conservatives have come forward with a solution to clean up the mess the Liberal Prime Minister has made. This motion today calls for the following. One, we call for the Prime Minister to cancel litigation guideline 14 and instead replace it, that guideline which bans federal lawyers from defending property rights, and replace that guideline with a new one which requires they defend property rights in all such disputes. Two, to set a policy that the federal government will not sign any more agreements with any First Nations that do not explicitly protect fee simple property rights as having seniority over all other claims. Three, within 30 days, the Liberal Prime Minister should present his plan to protect the property rights of British Columbians. It's been 8 months since this ruling. This is a federal issue where he is the federal defendant. He is the head of the federal government. He, by now, should have come up with a plan to defend the property rights of the people of British Columbia. And four, that we immediately convene a parliamentary committee to begin studying how we can save the property rights and the home ownership of the people of British Columbia and all of Canada. A 4-step action plan that will immediately allow us to step up and do our jobs, defend the homeowners. Mr. Speaker, these are people who in good faith bought the land, paid down the mortgages, followed the rules. They deserve to have the security and the certainty that they own the homes that they live in. Conservatives will fight for you. We'll fight for your home, for your land, for your property, and for all Canadians.
Hear, hear. Question commentaire, the Honourable Secretary of State Rural Development.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. We absolutely reject the premise of the Leader of the Opposition's argument. Yeah. And I want to make sure, Mr. Speaker, and I quote what the Prime Minister said several days ago, the government will always defend private property rights. And I'll say it again, the government will always defend private property rights. We immediately appealed the Cowichan decision. We have always defended private property rights, we always will, and we'll always defend the rights of Indigenous people to build a Canada that is stronger, fairer, and more independent. So why does the Leader of the Opposition try and divide Canadians and misrepresent our Prime Minister?
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Mr. Speaker.
What are you doing here?
It's all an illusion, Mr. Speaker. The Prime Minister says one thing while doing precisely the opposite. That has actually been the signature trait of his entire Prime Ministership. He does precisely the opposite of what he says. While he was making those comments in the House of Commons, on his own federal government website was litigation guideline 14, which forbids federal lawyers from defending fee simple property rights in challenges by First Nations. So it is another example of the Prime Minister providing an illusion of one thing while doing precisely the opposite.